we'll discuss about caste, class, ethnicity, and gender of urban sociology. Last time we discussed about the slums, neighborhood, and gated community. Before starting the class, caste, ethnicity, and gender, we'll discuss about the critique of gated communities as we discussed what is gated community in our last lecture. The major criticism against the gated communities has been the social and spatial polarization caused by them in society. This gated community creates a spatial polarization. With fortifications, gated neighborhood allow for the privatization of public spaces. When the gated communities developed, it fortify it fortified that the gated community allow the privatization of public spaces because they install gates around their communities in the name of security. So it allowed the privatizations of the public spaces as people belonging to that particular space can enter into that community or that area. No one else can access that area. This appropriations of public spaces and resources by a group of urban residents is discriminatory against other groups, especially the urban poor. This creates a lot of problem because they privatize the public resources, they privatize the public spaces, and only a group of urban resident can access those resources, and no one else, especially the urban poor, cannot access those resources or those areas. As a result, urban spaces can be divided into parts that are accessible to the lower classes and those that are not. This leads to spatial segregation and a regime of urban development that is exclusionary and discriminatory. This give rise to exclusionary and discriminatory type of a nature because certain people or the certain citizens can access the resources of that gated community but not others. It divided it divide the parts that are accessible. It divides the urban area into parts that are accessible to the lower classes and those that are not. So this is a discriminatory type of work or a nature. The capitalist nature of the city is represented in the city by distinct groups residing in different areas based on their socio-economic position, increasing geographical segregations. The government legitimizes this trend by incentivizing and encouraging the development of gated communities. Gated neighborhoods then become a symbol of status and desirability. Because of the legitimatizations of this gated community by the government, this become a symbol of status. People who have money can purchase the accommodation or can live in the gated community because at the name of security and other benefits, right? And this increases the differentiation between the higher classes and the lower classes. The advent of gated communities sparked feeling of envy and anger in the neighboring community for the comforts and security enjoyed by the greater community's member. Gated communities inhibit the city from free interaction between the diverse social and cultural groups in the city. Because of this gated community, because of the gates, this inhibits the interaction between the diverse social and cultural groups. There is a little or no contact between the people living in the gated community and the world outside. Because what is gated community? A city within a city is a gated community, right? So they don't feel like to go outside because they get all the required resources or the required things within that gated community, within that city, right? So there is no contact between the people living in the gated community and the world outside. Gated communities are preferred by higher income groups. A criteria that determine people's choice of neighborhood is perceptions of the neighbors. The fact that we seek out neighbors who live similar lifestyle to us has a homogenizing effect. As we discussed in our last lecture, that we always choose our neighbors according to our status, according to our class, according to our lifestyle. So it gives us a homogenizing effect. This is consequent in a socially homogeneous space where residents came from the similar socio-economic status. Such homogeneous spatial arrangement based on the parameters such as race, ethnicity, income, and social status leads to a polarized city, which is choose our neighbors, or this choosing the neighbor and homogeneous spatial arrangements could be based on the based on the races, right? People from a similar race to, try to live together within a area. It could be based on the ethnicity, it could be based on the class, it could be based on the profession, it could be based on the income. The scenario is aggravated when it leads to an uneven development pattern. As per Anthony Giddens, social structure were reproduced effectively by social actors in their everyday practices, and that in this reproduction there was a sense of knowledge about those practices that they were continuing. Social structure is very effective or is affected by the social actor. Giddens relied on an ethno-methodological approach to arrive at such conclusion. For Giddens, while social action can be taken only in the background of resources provided by the structure. So actions are based on the resources provided by the structure only through the careful interaction of knowledgeable social actor. Social life in the contemporary world become increasingly reflexive because the development of modernity brought along with it a detraditionalization and a clash of cultures whose primary cause was globalization. In contemporary world, people are self-centered. Discourse theory, particularly inspired by Michael Foucault, as well as the entire wave of post-structuralist thinker, exemplify the idea that the culture is constitutive of that is. It is made up of social actor. According to Foucault and post-structuralist culture, urban culture is a constitutive of that is made up of social actor. Culture is made up of social actors. Now we'll start with caste, class, ethnicity, and gender. The cultural politics of urban space also includes more traditional markers of identities like caste, class, specific identities, ethnicity, gender, race, and class, amongst other, and especially in Indian context, caste. This cultural politics is based on many factors like caste, class, gender, ethnicity. But if we discuss it about in Indian context, the caste plays an important role in cultural politics. The more complex the urban landscape is, the more are the points of entry we find into the individual subjectivities of the people who constitute that landscape. Because people from the various different cultural backgrounds migrate to the urban areas. So we find the individual subjectivities which constitutes the landscape, and when the people, because the people migrate from the various areas, so the landscape, urban landscape is more complex. Michael Foucault was concerned with precisely how power operates within a social field. He worked on the power, and according Michael Foucault, concern was how power operates in the social field. What is the role of power in social field? And for him, the answer was not quite as simple as the institutions such as state. Because when we think about a power, we think about a state. But for Foucault, the answer was not that simple. State, according to Foucault, state equals to power or power equals to state is not correct. So he wanted to find out how power operates within a social field. Such arguments were always the mainstay of political sociology. Having taken the conventional definition of politics for granted, understanding it as taking place at nation state, the Foucault broke out of the texture of these arguments. According to Foucault, power is productive. The sense is that it works to produce particular type of subjective identity through indoctrine indoctrine of certain practices which continue to remain invisible from the point of view of older model of power as sovereignty. Power for Foucault is plural. For Foucault, power is productive, power is plural. Plural means it is exercised from innumerable points, from a single political center as a possession of an elite or logic of bureaucratic institutions, and it is not governed by a single over social field. So it is power is plural, right? It is exercised from the innumerable points like political centers, like elite or the logical bureaucratic institutions, and it is that power is not governed by a single over social field. Power is productive. His analysis are opposed to what he believes to depend on the juridico discursive model. According to Foucault, power is productive, power is plural, and his analyses are opposed to what he believes to depend on the juridico discursive model, in which power is seen as possessed by the state, especially the law, and it is used to impose order on society. So his analysis was opposed, is totally opposite to what he believes to depend on discursive model. In this model, the power is seen to be possessed by the state, especially by the law. That is the legitimate, that is the authority, right? Authority of the state, and is this is imposed on the people in to order the society. According to him, where there is power, there must be resistance. In the subject and power, Foucault discusses the relationship between the domination, and resistance in contemporary society. Where there is power, there must be resistance. And in his work, The Subject and the Power, Foucault discusses the relationship between the domination, that is the power, and the resistance in the contemporary, in the present society. He moves beyond the essentially negative, restrictive, and inhibitory perspective on power in juridico-discursive model. He argued that power necessarily works on what he believes are fundamentally free subjects. It is only where resistance is legitimate possibility. Because according to Foucault, the power works on free subject, and because it works on the free subject, the free resistance is legitimately possible. Where the subject, although not fully determined, may still realize different opportunity of action from the scope that is available to them, that it is instructive to think in terms of power. Otherwise, it is simply a violence that we are contending with. Resistance, because the power applies on the subjects, and the subject can resist that power, because where there is a power there must be resistance. The subject may not be fully determined but may still realize the different opportunities of actions from the scope that is available to them. The subject could know, that subject could realize the different opportunities available to them, that it is instructive to think in terms of power. When the subjects start thinking about the different opportunities available to them, that is resistance. Otherwise, a simply violence that we are contended with. Power is everywhere, according to Foucault, and that subject is discursively constructed. He admits that the free subject indeed exists, and they necessarily must prior to discourse. Subjects are constructed in practices of power insofar as the subjects are subjected, where they are controlled by others, and also in so far as they are tied to their own identity by their own or another's conscious and the self knowledge. Subjects are constructed in practices of power insofar as the subjects are subjected, where they are controlled by the others. The subjects are controlled by the others. Why they are controlled by the others? Because they are tied to their own identity by their own consciousness, or because of another's consciousness and self knowledge, because they allow others to get power on them because of their self consciousness, or because of the consciousness of others, or the self knowledge. So, subjects are constructed in practice of power. Foucault's various analyses of power are linked directly with antagonistic struggle of social movement. He contends that in contemporary society, perhaps the most important aspect of these antagonistic struggle in is the way in which they challenges the subjectification, that is, creating a distinction amongst the people based on the caste, class, ethnicity, and gender. In contemporary society, according to Foucault, the most important aspect of the antagonistic struggle, because his study is based on the antagonistic struggle, and according to his studies, they challenges the subjectification. That is subjectification. That is, what is the meaning by creating a subjectification? Means creating a distinction on the basis of ethnicity, caste, gender, classes, status, and then one exert power on another subject. When it happens, when someone try to exert power, other subjects reacts, re- resist to that power. For Foucault, social movements are based on assertion of existing identities to a significant degree, and therefore also on the acceptance of binary categorization of normal and not normal produced in discourses as well as practices of power. In social movements are based on the assertion of existing identities, and this bifurcates the categories into two, that is normal and not normal, and it produces in discourses as well as practices of power. When we say that majority is doing so, that is normal, and when someone else, when someone deviates from the majority's point of view, we normally say that is not normal, but it cannot be true. But because of the powerfuls, because the people wants to exert power on this subject, so they categorize this into binary, that is normal and not normal, and it produced in the discourses as well as practices of power. According to Hindus reading of Foucault, he used more precise term in order to distinguish between power as a feature of all human interaction and domination as a particular structure of power in which antagonisms are consolidated in a hierarchical and stable relations. According to Hindens, he distinguished between the power as a feature of all human interaction, and according to him, power is the domination, and it is consolidated in hierarchical and stable relations. Power is hierarchical in nature. Power doesn't get denounced as such, but starts to represent the potential fluidity of social relations. Since power fundamentally only acts on those who may resist it and who may consequently in turn act on others, there remain always possibility there remains always the possibility of reversal of power. Power can be reversed, and power fundamentally acts on those who may resist it and who may consequently in turn act on others. And it could turn around, it could reversed, power could reversed. In domination or violence, those who are dominated are so cramped for assertions as movement that the theoretical reversal of power become impracticable, though it is never strictly speaking impossible. Reversal of power could be difficult, but it is not impossible. It could be reversed anytime. In his work on power, resistance, and domination, lays out the principle of model of cultural politics. So, power and resistance and domination lays out the principle of model of cultural politics. So, cultural politics is based on the power, resistance, and domination. Insofar as politics involves the contestation of fundamental and incidental relations of power, it is always possible to resist. It becomes a constitutive aspect of all social relations which are not based on violence. It becomes a constitutive aspect of our social relations which are not based on violence. So, resistance is not violence. You can resist to the power without violence. When a violence occurs, then it is impracticable or it is impractical to reverse the power, although not impossible but impractical. So, violence is different from resistance. Insofar as power necessarily, by definition, involves resistance, power relations are fluid, always potentially reversible. Because power involves resistance, so power there is a potentiability of reverse. It could be reversed. Power could be reversed. Lippmann writes in her paper, Making the Global City, Making Inequality. When you are making a global city, that you are making whole world, you are treating whole world as a city, you are creating inequalities on the basis of resource availability, inequalities on the basis of income status, class, caste, ethnicity, gender. That there has been little analysis of Chicago school reform and its relationship to political economy or cultural politics of the city, especially the cultural politic of race. So it is when you are making a global city, you are making inequalities. Why? Because of the relationship of political economy or cultural politics of any city. And it is based, and her statement is based on the cultural politics of race. In Lippmann's reading, both agency and constraint coexist at all level of the system. At various levels, the agency and constraint coexist, much like in Foucault's reading of power as productive as well as restrictive. According to Foucault, power is productive and restrictive. Similarly, according to Lippmann, both agencies and constraints coexist. Policy as practices therefore become the outcome of several conflicts and points of contention embedded in certain context. Because because agencies and um, constraint coexist, so it becomes so it happens that the outcome of several conflicts at the point of contention. This is the reason for the conflicts. As administrators and teachers rewrite policies through their own action with the restriction imposed to them, because power and restriction exist together, and the administrators or the policy maker rewrites the policies through their own actions. They have the power to rewrite the policies, but with the restrictions imposed on them. Restrictions are imposed on them. Economic globalization and technological capacity to generate knowledge at increasingly efficient speeds. There was a highly integrated and flexible system of production of goods and services resting on the foundation of global reorganization of labor process and transitional circuits of labor. Because of globalization, there is a change in economy. Now there is an economic globalization because of advancement of technology. It enhances the knowledge of individuals. Because of globalization, it highly integrates the various system. It created a flexible system of production of goods and services. And because of this globalization, it rearranged or reorganized the labor processes and transitional circuits of labors as that companies out processes some of their processes to lower income group countries. Companies of developed nations outprocess their some processes to some lower income group countries to save time and money. And this is possible because of globalization, and because of this, it has reorganized the labor process and the transitional circuits of labor. Under the global rule of capitalist accumulation, these development pronounced existing inequalities and created new ones. Because of this global rule, because of this globalization and the capitalist accumulation, it increases it resulted in inequalities. It it is responsible for creations of new types of problems, or it has given rise to many of the factors which are new factors which are responsible for inequalities. These development destabilize huge section of population on national as well as international level. Although there are certain pros of this globalization, but it stabilizes the huge section of population at the national as well as international level. Ultimately, fostering the spatial reorganization of cities, creating greater social segregation of races, ethnic group, and social classes. Because of development of capitalistic structure, because of globalization, people move from one country to another country, or from one city to another city, or from rural area to the urban areas, right? And because of this migration, because of this movement, it destabilizes the huge section of population. And because of this migration and movement, the spatial reorganization, there is a spatial reorganization of the cities. It creates a greater social segregation of races, ethnic group, and social classes. It has given rise to a social classes. People prefer to live in the group according to their races or ethnicity, or according to their status or class. They feel secure in groups, and this has reorganized the cities, spatially reorganized the cities. Within the United States itself, the economy shifted from a base in manufacturing to one in service and information, and this created a highly fragmented and progressively polarized labor force. This shift in economy has given rise to the fragmented and polarized labor force in US. The trends that mark the new labor force within the new economy. There are certain trends that marked the new labor forces within the new economy. What are those trends? A decrease in basic manufacturing accompanied by shift in its labor structure because of increase in the technology, because of the advancement of the technology. People shifted to the services rather than the manufacturing. So there is a shift in the labor structure too because of shifting of industries. Jobs held by the operatives rapidly decreased, while there was a sharp increase in professional and technical jobs because of declination of manufacturing industry jobs. There is a less job or there is a decrease in the job, right? In operative sector, while there is increase in professional and technical jobs. Second point is a significant increase in service job, which were highly segmented by wages and education, salaries and benefits. The advancement of technology or shifting from manufacturing to the service sector has created a lot of jobs in technical and the service sector. But these jobs, the jobs in the service sectors are highly segmented. They are segmented on the basis of wages. Wages varies from position to position. It varies according to education and other benefits. Whatever the benefits of a lower rank may vary from the benefits what a higher what a person at a higher rank may get. There must be a difference in the salaries, benefit, and the education of a rank worker and the higher rank worker in technical jobs. There was a rapid growth both in high skilled technical, managerial, and professional jobs at upper end, and low skilled, low wage jobs at other lower end. Third is the condensed proliferation of contingent labor, temporary, part time work, as well as multitasking, done mainly by people of colors, women, immigrants, working two or more jobs, sometimes even four. This has given rise to more pressure on the laborers. Now, to earn more profits, capitalists hire temporary worker, part-time worker. At times, they workers have to work. The worker has to work more than what is possible. They usually do multitasking. There is ambiguity, role ambiguity in their profile. And mainly this is done by the people of colors, by the females or immigrants worker. They work at two or more jobs. They are working two or more jobs because of the less salaries, because they have to survive in the cities, so they have to earn more, so they work at times two or more jobs. Fourth, a steadily growing informal economy that employed primarily women and immigrant workers. This globalization has given rise to informal economy. There are two types of economies: formal and informal economy. Informal economy means that the worker who are working, who are engaged in this type of economy, they don't get any benefit or this salary. There is no fixed salary. They don't have any legal rights, right? Or they don't get any benefits. So this has given rise to the informal economy that employed primarily the women and immigrant worker who produced specialized consumer goods and services for the significantly wealthy as well as low cost goods and services for low income families. Like they work in informal sectors like in home child care and the custom made clothings. Like when we hire someone to work at our to work in our houses to take care of our children, that is informal economy, and mostly the migrant workers and the women are involved in this type of jobs, right? um, Fifth is negligible work opportunities in formal economy for significant section of potential worker, primarily African American and Latino youth. There are very less opportunities available in the formal economy for these migrants. They could be potential workers, but they have less opportunities. And this was the result of simultaneous processes of upgrading, downgrading, and exclusion of labor in workforce that was highly stratified by class, race, national origin, and gender. Why this all happened? Because of simultaneous process of upgrading and downgrading, and because of exclusion of labor in a workforce. Why we exclude? On the basis of class, race, national origin, and the gender. This was a new economic context in which economic growth contributed to the greater inequality, because we always we because immigrants or especially women are working in informal sector, and the informal sector pays less than the formal sectors, and this has given rise to the greater inequalities, and these inequalities could be on the basis of class, could be on the basis of caste, could be on the basis of region, could be on the basis of religion. Gentrifying areas were booming in Chicago, as seen here at the expense of working class residents. The inflation in property taxes and rents made the neighborhoods where they raised families, established relationship, and dreamt of an ideal future too expensive for them. This inequality have given rise is responsible for inflation in property tax in Chicago, and it is now it become impossible for immigrants to survive or to live in that area. Low income neighborhoods becoming dilapidated due to neglect, while the city was simultaneously diverting taxes from libraries, schools, and other public services to infrastructure for development in select upper class areas. Those low income neighborhoods become neglected. They are neglected by the authorities. The authorities are investing or developing the infrastructure in the select upper class areas. They are diverting the money. They are investing the money in the development of the infrastructure related to upper class areas, while the authorities neglect the development of low income neighborhoods. Low income Latinos and African American were in particular being forced out to rapidly gentrifying areas and being increasingly segregated in the parts of the city and suburbs with the most depressed economic conditions. While these were the structural conditions, there was a kind of symbolic politics in the local schools through the operation of accountability policies. Although there is a differentiation on the basis of structural conditions, the development of the infrastructure in upper class areas rather than the lower class areas, authorities neglect the lower class areas. Apart from this, there is a symbol politics in local schools. It was another kind of a politics. It was another kind of differentiation or inequality. That is the symbolic politics. Spanish was the first language of virtually all of the students or their families in some schools. They were devalued in favor of new requirements of testing bilingual students in English. This is symbolic politics, as Spanish was the first language, but it was devalued in Chicago. Why it was devalued? In favor of a new requirements for testing bilingual students in English. The new bilingual education standards are also symbolically privileged English language acquisition over bilingualism and biculturalism. It privileged the English language acquisition. Lippmann's analysis focused on the reality that although there were new educational opportunities claimed as being open for everyone, the vast majority were primarily students of colors who were likely to attend the schools. Although it has been said that it has been claimed that the new educational opportunities are available for everyone, but in reality, the students of color, majority of the color students likely to attend the schools, arranged mostly around the basic literacies that would prepare them only for the low wage jobs. These schools prepare those students for the low wage jobs. This is symbolic inequality. It has been claimed, although the authorities claimed that there is equal job opportunities for everyone, but the type of resources and the type of education provided to the color student in the schools is like that they were preparing they were preparing those students for the low wage jobs. The idea was that in a system of unabashed inequalities, the agenda of standard tests or accountability was framed in the language of equality and justice. And all this has been done in the name of equality and justice. Spatial distribution of schools and ethnic identities. It was not only in curriculum that this sharp disparity between the different ethnicities was noticed. Spatially, as well as data seems to indicate the same inferences. There is difference in the curriculum in the schools according to the ethnicity. There is a sharp disparity. even in the curriculums. Although the high profile programs and schools alleged to be academically challenging were scattered throughout the city, almost all whole school, college preparatory programs were found clustered in predominantly middle class, gentrifying or the white areas. Although it has been claimed that a high profile program and schools alleged to be academically challenged is scattered were scattered all over the city, but in reality they were concentrated, they were found clustered in predominantly in the areas of middle class, gentrifying or the white areas. They ignored those areas or the suburb areas where the colored people, which were where the colored people lived. A majority of considerably academically challenged programs in low income communities involved only a portion of the students. Military, vocational, and DI school, most involving all students in the school, were clumped together in low income African American or Latino areas. Challenging programs were concentrated mainly in the schools of middle income group for children of white, but military, vocational, or DI schools were mostly involved in all the schools or in schools of low income African American or Latino areas. There was a striking relationship between evolving educational differentiation in Chicago public school reforms and the segmented labor force in restructured economy. In the new economy of simultaneously downgraded higher skilled laborers, many of the jobs available to the graduates of vocational and military school do not offer the security, benefits, or somewhat stable incomes. This is symbolic inequality. That most of the jobs which provides securities or a fixed income were not offered to the Latino or African Americano student or youth. These youth were considered for low income jobs. Educational differentiation takes on a new meaning in society in which knowledge is far more decisive than in the past. No longer can it be conclusively said that a high school diploma is sufficient to gain entry to a respectable, well paid, and a stable job which offer a secure sense of future. And then again, there is a discrimination in the education. Differentiated schools and programs provide students with different resources from which to construct their identities. School or the education plays an important role in the construction of identities of individual. And now there is a differentiation of schools and the program on the basis of ethnicity, races, culture, or income, right? And if their different resources were provided to the different schools, and these schools are responsible or plays an important role in construct of the identities of the youth. The material and ideological effect of segregated learning produce differentiated subjects for whom the social field is constructed in such a way as to foreclose possibility of certain identities with the space of cultural politics. And because of this, it closes the forecloses the possibility of certain possibilities for certain identities, and in this way it within a it gives it happens because of the cultural politics. Gender and migration. The most obvious sense of cultural politics is the politics of civil society, and particularly, as Foucault himself argued, of social movement. Different social theorists have agreed with the idea that construction of collective identity in meaningful interaction is an important aspect of activity relating to social movement. Social movements are engaged in cultural politics, contesting dominant understanding of events, institutions, and their position in relations to other in order to construct an oppositional collective identity. Another area very much in foreground that has attracted the attention of political sociologists, which demands them to seriously consider the implication of cultural politics, is citizenship rights and their contestations. One of the emergent themes in cultural politics of citizenship is idea of differences in equality. Given that multicultural rights are now increasingly being seen to be the fundamental, the rights to difference in equality, such as gender, caste, class, or ethnicity, are just as much a matter of cultural politics. The case of LGBTQ rights, the entire concept of citizenship itself is questioned. LGBTQ community, we deprive them from their certain rights, and it questions the concept of citizenship. In the case of migration, the struggle remains very much the same on the some level. They too are considered to be different. Immigrants are almost always seen to be the bearers of alien culture. People don't accept them. According to Stolek, who wrote The Problem of Immigration is Constructed, however, as a political threat to a national identity and integrity on account of immigrants. Migration plays a important role in creating a new opportunities for women, whether it be to improve their lives economically or to transform oppressive gender relationships. Although there are many problems associated with migration, but there are certain good things about the migration associated with the migration, especially for the women. It transform their identities, it make them economically sound, and it transformed the oppressive gender relationship of men and women. Migration is far from being a free from unregulated process. Rather, it is largely governed by combination of social structure, as also the state, which channel them into a limited range of work option. That's all for today. Thank you very much. Namaskar.